laptop is just totally not cooperating. I might be able to do it on my computer, but it's not how I usually do it.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Let me call to order the Albany City Council meeting of Monday, October 5th. And Councilmember Moss has agreed to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, someday, and only if you go out and vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that version. One moment, please. There we go. Next on the agenda is roll call. City Clerk, please.
Councilmember Barnes?
Here.
Councilmember Moss?
Here.
Councilmember Nason?
Here.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Here.
Mayor Pilch?
Here. Thank you very much. And on to item number 3, ceremonial matters. I just have a few items that I'd like to bring to the attention of the audience. Number 1, despite what you might see in the news, we are not out of it yet. Please wear your mask. Please continue to social distance. Please continue to follow all the rules. COVID-19 is very, very serious. Over 200,000 people have died in the United States, and the numbers are still climbing. I want to note that this month is LGBTQ History Month, and you can find information at lgbthistorymonth.com. And finally, I want to make a note about our firefighters. Our firefighters have once again been deployed to fight the wildfires in the state. They've been deployed to the grass fire, which is one of the ones near the Napa Valley, which is, I haven't checked lately, but it started out with very little containment and a very scary fire. I will note that California has already is well past the previous records for acres burned in a year, and it's only the beginning of October. My best wishes to our firefighters, and thank them for their service to our city and to the state and other cities as well. Next item on the agenda is, did anyone have an item under ceremonial matters, by the way? No, seeing heads shake. Okay, next is report on action taken in closed session, if any. Item number 4, there was no closed session at this meeting, so we'll move on to item 5, the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion unless an item is pulled for discussion by either council members or the public. So would any council member like to pull an item?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull 5.5.
5.5, thank you. Please just go ahead and shout it out. No others to be pulled. I believe I have one to pull, which is the 5.6. And I will ask if there's any members of the public who wish to pull an item for discussion.
Mayor, there's a hand raised. I'm going to allow him to talk to see if he's pulling one.
Thank you.
Jeremiah, are you pulling an item off the consent calendar?
At this time, I'm not pulling an item off the consent calendar. I was just wondering if possibly early in the meeting, can honor Elaine at some point. Her family and people are listening. Thank you.
I believe the good of the city would be appropriate for that. Please note that we will also be ending our meeting in honor of Elaine Obando Vide. Okay, so seeing no other items being pulled by the public, over to Vice Mayor McQuaid with item 5.5.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I put this item on the agenda to recognize Indigenous people. It's a proclamation. Let me see what, I'm not going to read the whole proclamation, but it does recognize the second Monday in October as Indigenous Peoples Day. And this is something that I've been working on for a while, even before the COVID sort of slowed this process down. We don't have a holiday there for either Indigenous Peoples Day or Columbus Day, but I'd like to see, as we work on our equity plan, that we consider adding Indigenous people here, either just replacing Columbus Day or perhaps adding a holiday. I'm not quite sure, but I'd like to continue that work, figuring that out. And I'd also like to explore including Juneteenth as a city holiday. And like I said, including both of these in our equity plan as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions about item 5.5? And welcome, Councilmember Nason. It seems you have your laptop issues fixed. Okay, thank you. Okay, then moving on to item 5.6, the resolution calling for the federal government to extend temporary protected status, or TPS. I was approached by a group who wanted me to put this on our agenda, and I was happy to do so. And I believe a few members are that group, a few representatives of that group are here to speak briefly on that. I believe there was a Krista who was to be going first. So any of those representatives, now is the time to raise your hand if you wish to speak to this item, temporary protected status, TPS. And I do see a Christina. I think that is the person who should be speaking first. So go ahead, City Clerk.
Yes, hi, my name is Cristina Morales. I'm a plaintiff in the Ramos TPS lawsuit. Back into 2018 in March, we filed a lawsuit to protect over 400,000 families around the US from deportation. A lot of us under TPS, we have been under TPS for over 20 years, others 18 years, other 19 years. We, under the lawsuit, is countries from Sudan, Haiti, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Nepal. The reason why I'm here is to share a little bit about my story. I came to the US from El Salvador back in 1993 when I was only 12. I came here to escape the physical and mental abuse from my father. Since then, I went to school. I grew up in Marine. Now I'm homeowner. My daughter Krista, she's next to me, and my son Diego, and my husband and I, we have dedicated our time to our kids, and also we volunteer in Richmond. We have 2 soccer teams for the past 10 years. And since this decision came, a lot of things changed around my life. Now I'm in the crisis to lose everything that I work so hard for, which is my family, my home, or place my family to choose between me, their country. And I want to share my story. I just want everybody to hear what is happening to TPS around the country, TPS families. A lot of us are homeowners or business owners, and I would like to continue sharing my story and finding support to end this massive TPS family separation that can happen if we lose all the legal status that we're fighting in the court. And right now in Congress, there's a bill HR 6, in the Senate, that they haven't passed. And that's why we need all the support to find justice for TPS families.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker.
Go ahead, Margie.
Hi, this is Margie Marks. I just wanted to thank the council for putting this on the agenda. And I also want to say that the previous speaker said it very well, but all of those citizens that received temporary protective status from El Salvador, Haiti, Sudan, and Nicaragua will have it removed regardless of what the circumstances that brought them to this country, how terrible the conditions were, whatever. They're all going to be due to be removed early next year by this administration. So thank you, the council, for taking this up.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any more members of the public who wish to speak on this item? I see one more. It's the same person, Christina, but perhaps there was someone else with you who wanted to also speak. Could you let Christina back in? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Krista Ramos. Christina Morales is my mom. I'm 16 years old. I'm a U.S. citizen. Back in 2018, the Trump administration ended TPS. And then that's when I found out that my mom had this status. And I learned that my family could be separated. There are over 250,000 U.S. citizen children in this situation that could be separated from their parents. And that's why I decided to join the lawsuit, to fight for my family, to let the government know that they shouldn't be making me choose between my country or my family. Right now I'm in high school, I'm a junior, and I'm already planning on what colleges I want to go to, but I can't. I'm also thinking of my education, but I'm also thinking of my family, of my mom's safety. And so right now, as my mom said, we're still in the courts to find a solution to keep our families together. But we're also fighting through Congress to keep my family and thousands of families around the country together.
Thank you for your comments. And that was the last comment from a member of the public. And I see that Councilmember Moss has his hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Mayor, for putting this on and remind people that might be watching tonight that this is something that needs to be resolved. And perhaps the best way to resolve it is to consider who has temporary elected status that can be changed this November.
I see. Thank you very much. I get it. Thank you. And that concludes the items that were pulled for discussion. And are there any more comments on item 5.6? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Would you do the roll call vote, please, City Clerk?
Councilmember Barnes,
Yes.
Councilmember Moss,
Yes.
Councilmember Nason,
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuay,
Yes.
Mayor Pilch.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Excuse me. Thank you. Moving on to item 6, good of the city, public comment. This is for persons wishing to address the city council on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. Do we have any speakers tonight? Looks like we do. Please allow them in, City Clerk.
Go ahead, Clay.
I'm sorry, who's, oh, I guess it's Clay. I'd like to comment on a current City of Albany planning process, the so-called San Pablo Avenue specific plan. The consultants which are running this show here for the project are proposing that the city allow intense infill development on San Pablo Avenue, including 6 to 8 story, 60 to 80 foot tall buildings, allow density to increase from the current 63 units per acre to 150 units per acre. Floor area ratios would be increased from 2.25 to 4.7. The consultants have proposed reducing or eliminating current setback and daylight plane requirements, which are intended to minimize the impact of the development on adjacent neighborhoods. The stated goal of the consultants' plan is to maximize infill development on San Pablo Avenue. This in turn is driven by the anticipated increase in Albany's so-called RENA or regional housing needs allocation. The current RENA is 335 units. City staff have estimated that Albany's RENA for the next 8-year cycle will be between 1,000 and 1,300 units. Packing all this development onto San Pablo Avenue, however, will have a huge adverse impact on the surrounding neighborhoods. It's not consistent with state law, and it won't be good for Albany in general. The consultants claim that they're simply implementing the current general plan, specifically the general plan's goal of transforming the San Pablo Avenue corridor from auto-oriented commercial use to a more attractive pedestrian-oriented mixed-use development. However, the changes in density and height limits, setbacks and daylight planes, and FAR will require changes to the general plan. So while the consultants claim to be implementing the general plan, which under planning law is what specific plans are supposed to do, they're actually proposing amending the general plan. Amending the general plan is a big deal. The general plan is a description of the community's vision for future growth. Amending a general plan must be a community-driven process with ample opportunities for community input. Public meetings and study sessions, walkthroughs, and charrettes can help develop community consensus. The public participation necessary for this process is not possible with the current shelter-in-place rules. Accordingly, the general plan update, which again is what this actually is, should be postponed until such time as full public participation can be accommodated. Albany's next land use element is due in 2023, so we have time to do this right if we have the right planning process. The reason I'm bringing this forward is because this has gone before the Planning and Zoning Commissions 3 times, and I've seen very little in critical or even intelligent comment on the part of the commissioners, with one exception. Commissioner Donaldson has raised some questions regarding the whole process, and actually at the last meeting in an open letter to the commission suggested that they sort of stop the plan midway and determine what the real goals are. But that suggestion and Commissioner Donaldson's comments have been largely ignored. I assume you guys talk to your representatives. I would like to see a more higher quality evaluation of this plan. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Go ahead, Margie.
Hi, this is Margie Marks. I wanted to alert the citizens of Albany that students at Albany High School have started an initiative with the school board to do what they call diversify our narrative, to teach anti-racism in our schools. So the school district in Albany is putting aside $50,000 for printed materials. And citizens of Albany can contribute to help pay for these materials if you just go to the Board of Education website. Then from there, you go to diversify our narrative, and it'll take you to a spot where you can donate to help purchase these materials so that we can go forward with this initiative in Albany. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Hi, Jeremiah.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jeremiah Garrett Pinguello, and I'm here to honor my wife, Elaine Videa, her legacy in Albany. Her father, his name is Salvador Obando, and he lives in Nicaragua. in Esteli, Pueblo Nuevo, Esteli. And he's the principal of the high school for many years. And he works on his avocado farm. And her uncle, Miguel Obando, is the Archbishop, is the Cardinal of Nicaragua, the president's advisor. He passed away last year during all the commotion. She has two brothers in Nicaragua, Rene Obando and Mijael Obando Rodriguez. Mijael studies business administration. And on the day of Elaine's passing, he was the MVP on his soccer football team in Pueblo Nuevo, and he won the championship of the country on that day. Her mother, Elaine's mother, is Maria Elsa Videa, and she helped escort Elaine to the United States. She came and worked in Long Beach Memorial Hospital. She was a head nurse operations manager, and she was also operations manager, Sisters of St. Joseph in Long Beach. And Elaine was born in Nicaragua, and she's very intelligent. She started reading and writing at the age of 3. She's taught herself to read English and write English from encyclopedias because her father was a principal of the school. And she was so intelligent, the political leaders of Nicaragua sent her to the United States to study in America. And she ended up going to Long Beach Polytech and graduated as a salutatorian, valedictorian with 4.5 GPA. She got a full ride academic scholarship to Cal Berkeley and all expenses paid. She graduated from there after 7 years, Bolt Hall, and also a mass communications major as well. Then she went to Golden Gate Law for another 8 years. And Elaine did numerous things around the city. And I love Elaine so much with the bottom of my heart. And I'm here in Albany to keep Elaine's legacy alive. And I know Elaine's kindness and wonderful generosity to the city will be eternally gratefully missed. And her unfortunate passing, I just know she's basking in eternal love and joy in heaven. And thank you. And her mother thanks the mayor and the city council.
Thank you,
Elaine. Thank you.
Seeing no other speakers for public comment, good of the city, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 7, council subcommittee reports and reports on appointed representation and other meetings and events. Let me try to do this in order this time. Item 7.1 is city council subcommittees. In scanning this right before this time, I see that the last reported San Pablo Avenue corridor project report is from 2019, but I do believe that Councilmember Nason and I reported out on that more recently than that, so we might want to check the records. I believe it was just perhaps a few months ago. So let's check on that. We're mostly up to date except for the cannabis ordinance. I've been too busy to get back to that, unfortunately. Councilmember Vice Mayor McQuaid and I might want to think about whether the inclusivity subcommittee still makes sense now that so we might want to bring that back formally for dissolution at the next meeting, since the SEJC is studying matters like that now. Then I think the rest are up to date, unless there is any other subcommittee report for tonight. Seeing none, then let's move on to regional body appointed representation reports. Does anyone have a report?
Yeah, I do.
Please go ahead.
Excuse me. At our last meeting, I talked a little bit about the League of California Cities upcoming conference. and being the voting delegate. Well, the Public Safety Committee met last week to discuss the resolution on amending Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act of 1996. It's an interesting committee. We had a good discussion, the final vote being 18-17 to support the resolution. So it certainly wasn't overwhelming support. I did share the concerns of several of the speakers, thinking about it as the potential misuse in in changing it, and potential violations of the First Amendment, and it's written very vaguely. I voted no at that meeting, and I anticipate voting no at the General Assembly later this week. But I just wanted to catch you all up on that piece.
Thank you for that. Anything else, Vice Mayor, or anything else from anyone else?
Not on that part.
Okay. In terms of appointed representation, I attended a Stop Waste meeting. Nothing substantive to report out of that. I attended the full ACTC Alameda County Transportation Commission meeting, where I once again abstained on the vote for Valley Link, but there were enough votes to pass transferring the funding of $400 million that had previously been allocated for BART to Livermore to the Valley Link project, but only to support the portion of Valley Link that will be in Alameda County, and with the also with an amendment introduced by Emeryville Councilmember John Bowders that the first portion of Valley Link to be constructed would also be in Alameda County. And then I attended an EBCE subcommittee meeting, the Marketing, Regulatory, and Legislative Subcommittee, and attended the full East Bay Community Energy EBCE meeting as well, where a number of matters were discussed, as well as Bright Choice and Building 100 and these items that I mentioned at the last meeting. And we have a report from EBCE staff tonight as well on the agenda, so I won't go I won't go further into that, except to say that the CEO of EBCE did contact me to let me know that staff did not intend to rush this process in order that there be enough time to come to an agreement that was suitable as much as possible to all the jurisdictions. And that's it for my appointed representation meetings. Anyone else have any other meetings attended that they'd like to report on? I'm not. Go ahead.
Okay, I just would say that, excuse me, I did attend the Everyone Home Leadership Board last week. Again, lots of webinars and our weekly business calls with the staff and also the business community.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. Seeing no other hands raised for other meetings attended, let's move on. And the next item on the agenda is the city manager report. Please go ahead, city manager.
Thank you. A few things to note. As set out last week in our e-Notify news, Alameda County Public Health has updated the shelter-in-place order to allow for certain types of businesses and other institutions to reopen with precautionary measures in place. We continue to house all of this information on our website. The short link is albanyca.org/coronavirus, and you can find a link to that updated order there. Staff in our community development department will be hosting a virtual workshop with Solano Avenue businesses regarding outdoor dining in the roadway. The goal of the workshop is to discuss safety and winter weather issues and work towards how to ensure the needs of all businesses in the district are met as best as possible. The workshop will also include a discussion of the upcoming curb ramp project on Solano Avenue, and staff is developing options for traffic calming on Solano Avenue pursuant to the City Council direction. The workshop is scheduled for October 13th at 3 o'clock. It's a virtual workshop. Also, as you've seen in our e-news and e-notify, we are continuing our evacuation assistance registry. This is to serve our residents and the circumstances that they may need assistance with during the event of an emergency. You can go online to register. It's all voluntary information, but incredibly helpful in an emergency when we're responding. It's on our website again, albanyca.org/evacuation-assistance. We've also included on our website a new social equity and inclusion page. This is to collect all of the work being done on this topic. As you know, it's a lot of work and a lot of different places. So hopefully this will help centralize that information and make it more accessible. That's on our website at albanyca.org/social equity. From the police department, October is Crime Prevention Month. So when it comes to the safety of your family and your neighborhood, a combined team effort with your community is the best way to go. In recognition of Crime Prevention Month, our police department is sharing their top priority safety tips to help us all learn how to improve neighborhood security. Those are also posted on our website. And it's Albany Local Week. It's very different this year, but probably one of the most critical years to be as supportive as possible of our local business community. So please watch for this week. It will be promoted on our website and through all of our social media channels. The week starts October 17th and runs through October 24th. How much can you do while practicing physical social distancing within Albany's 1 square mile? You can find out more information at albanyca.org/Albany Local Week. We are also continuing to serve those in need, particularly with meals, groceries, essential items, phone calls, and shopping trips. We are now at 9,000 meals delivered, and all of the services continue in an ongoing effort throughout the pandemic. From Public Works, Marin Avenue undergrounding update. The 2 remaining tasks on the Marin Avenue project are removing overhead communication lines and poles and installing the remaining 2 street lights. Also planting trees in the newly created planters. The overhead lines and poles were scheduled to be removed by AT&T this past spring. However, this work was temporarily postponed due to the pandemic. Staff has been coordinating with AT&T, but has not received an updated schedule as of yet. The plan for planting trees along this stretch of Marin was reviewed by Park Rec Open Space Commission in July, with a target planting of trees in the fall planting season. And then also a capital projects update. The sidewalk repair program phase 3 began construction today. The phase of construction includes 48 locations throughout the city and is thankfully funded through Measure P1 parcel tax, which was passed in 2016. Expect night work on San Pablo over the next week or so, including single lane traffic closures. Our contractor is finishing the last section of the 2020 sanitary sewer rehab project, which runs through the Gill Track easement. The previous phases of the work are substantially complete, including work performed on Marin, Ocean View Park, and Jackson Street. Almost done. Maintenance update. Maintenance staff has removed deteriorated newspaper vending kiosks throughout the city. This is a long time coming, so I applaud them for doing this work. And we're also continuing sidewalk crack sealing along San Pablo and Solano Avenues. Now, as Councilmember Moss noted the upcoming election a couple of times thus far, I wanted to turn it over to our city clerk for a minute to give an update on the hard work she's done to coordinate this very unique election year to make sure that our voters have robust access as much as possible to voting and dropping off their mail-in ballots. So, Anne, if you wouldn't mind sharing some information with the council and the community.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, Council. So as you know, the upcoming election is Tuesday, November 3rd. And due to the pandemic, every registered voter will receive a vote by mail ballot to cast their vote. And they can register, anyone can register to vote if they qualify at the California Online Voter Registration website, which is www. Hold on a second, let me actually share a screen so it's easier for people to see the web address. Register to vote at the registertovote.ca.gov or go to the Alameda County Register of Voters website, acvoting/voting/register-to-vote. If anyone needs a hard copy of the registration form, they are located right outside of the Albany Library Community Center entrance on the parking lot side. The ROV has started to mail out the voter information guide about a week ago. I personally just received mine this past weekend, and also the vote by mail ballot will be sent out between today, October 5th, and October 27th. If your vote by mail ballot is not received in the next 2 to 3 weeks, please contact the Alameda County Register of Voter office at 510-272-6973 or acvote.org for a replacement ballot. And there are several different ways that you can return your vote by mail ballot. One, you can mail it back. It's postage paid. Drop it off at a mailbox. And second way, there's 24-hour drop box located right outside of City Hall entrance on the parking lot side. When I checked today, the drop box has been uncovered and ready to receive ballot. Also, I have coordinated with the Registrar of Voter office, and there'll be two early voting drop stop events in Albany. The first one will be Tuesday, October 13th and Wednesday, October 14th between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. right outside of Albany Library Community Center at 1249 Marin. These events you can walk, roll, or drive by to drop off your ballot. The outreach team will be available, will be present to answer any question. And the second event will happen on Tuesday, October 27th and Wednesday, October 28th, same thing, 10 to 4, outside of Albany YMCA at 921 Canes. Also, this election is going to be a little bit different. It's not going to have your usual polling places. Instead, we will have two what they call accessible voting locations or vote centers in Albany. One will be located at the UC Village Apparatus Bay, 1053 Monroe Street, and the other one will be the Albany Veterans Memorial Hall at 1325 Portland Avenue. And they will be open the Saturday before the election day. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, they will be open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And on election day, it would be 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And for more information, please check out the city website, albanyca.org/vote. And all the ways to return ballot is on there as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you'll forgive me, I want to also note one thing, which is that not only are we all getting mail-in ballots, but you can track your ballot in California. I just typed in "Where's my ballot CA," and I got to this website, and I am tracking my ballot, and I got a text today saying that my ballot was in the mail to me and would take, you probably can't read this, but it would take 5 to 7 business days to get to me. So I think that's a unique, cool feature that folks ought to take take advantage of as well. So thank you very much, City Clerk, for that awesome report. And also, City Manager, I had gotten some questions from the public about the fact that these, going back to the safety on Solano, about the fact that the Traffic and Safety Commission had made some recommendations, and those appear to have not been implemented. Did you want to speak to that now, or at the upcoming event?
I believe staff is coordinating on those.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And are there any questions for the City Manager? Thank you. And I'll have to say that I don't mind a long report at all, full of great information. So thank you very much for that. Moving on. Getting back to my agenda, I see that the next item is presentation. Item 9. Item 9.1 is the introduction of Kurt. Well, please correct me if I mispronounce this. Wiest, a new executive director of the Alameda County Housing Authority.
Mr. Mayor, it's my honor to introduce Mr. Wiest to our meeting tonight. He was appointed as executive director of the Housing Authority of Alameda County on June 29, 2020. He's actually returning to HACA after working for the past 14 years as the executive director of the Bremerton, Washington Housing Authority. Previously, he served as the deputy director for programs at HACA. So let's all welcome Mr. Wiest.
And perhaps you could unmute and tell us the correct pronunciation of your name for the record. You're still muted. Hello? You should be able to speak now. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you. Or see you. I think that's an artifact of the way our current webinars is set up. Well, it looks like we're having some technical difficulties, and unfortunately, we won't get to hear you if we resolve. Oh, there we go. Yay. Perfect. Oh, we're still not able to hear you, unfortunately. I don't know where that problem is, but at least we're able to see you, which is wonderful. So if we can't resolve that, I'll say welcome. And if we resolve the audio issue, feel free to come back in a moment and actually say hello. But thank you, Vice Mayor, for introducing Mr. Okay, give us a thumbs up if this is correct. Is it Wiest or is it Wiest? Wiest. Okay, got it. Wait, okay, is it Wiest? It is Wiest. Okay, got it. All right, thank you. Thank you for doing the head nod, sign language. Welcome again. Thank you very much. And next item on the agenda is item 9.2, the report from East Bay Community Energy, presentation regarding the changes to the 2021 product offerings. And who do we have? Do you have a staff report on this?
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and members of the City Council. I'm Lizzie Crod, the City of Albany Sustainability Coordinator, and tonight we will be discussing the changes to the East Bay Community Energy rates and power mix. So I'll give a brief introduction about EBCE's history in Albany, and then I'll pass the mic over to Alex DeGiorgio of East Bay Community Energy. Next slide, please. So for a little bit of background about EBCE in Albany, Albany joined EBCE in November 2016. The City Council voted to enroll all Albany accounts, which includes municipal, commercial, industrial, residential, and CARE FIRA medical baseline customers into Brilliant 100 in March 2018. Brilliant 100 for the last couple years has been 100% carbon free at price parity to PG&E's standard rates. And in June 2018 and November 2018, EBCE started delivering electricity to commercial and municipal accounts and residents. And on the left, you'll see a pie chart, which is taken directly from our Climate Action and Adaptation Plan that gives an estimated 2018 greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which includes the 100% carbon neutral electricity from EBCE. So we're operating under the assumption that the 100% carbon-free electricity allowed us to pretty much cancel out our electricity emissions, and really our emissions now are coming from commercial and residential gas, transportation, and then a little bit on the downstream end of waste. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we have a Climate Action and Adaptation Plan in Albany. This council adopted it in December 2019, and the main priorities of that plan are to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045, advance active, shared, and electric transportation, electrify new and existing buildings, advance a carbon-free economy, and promote resilience for all. And you'll also see that we aim to have co-benefits to each action. Some of those include feasibility, leadership, greenhouse gas emissions reduction potential, public health, resilience, and equity. Next slide, please. I think it's also important to note that our Climate Action and Adaptation Plan defines sustainability as the intersection of social equity, economic stability, and environmental quality. So we should keep in mind all three of these themes when we're discussing anything related to sustainability in the city of Albany, including the discussion tonight. Next slide, please. Last week, the Climate Action Committee held a special meeting to discuss the Climate Action Committee thoughts on the potential options for after December 31st, 2020, when new changes are to potentially take effect. And the recommendations, it's a little tricky, so let me know if this doesn't make sense, but we prioritize recommendations in case certain options are not available. That if and situation will be later explained by Alex DeGiorgio from EBCE. But the CAC's recommendation is first, to keep all accounts on Brilliant 100 if the Brilliant 100 product stays at carbon-free electricity at price parity to PG&E. If that is not available, the second recommendation would be to place all accounts in Albany on the nuclear option, which would be a 100% carbon-free option at price parity to PG&E. It would just include that nuclear allocation, which previously was not included in Brilliant 100. If that is not available, the third recommendation would be to place residential accounts on Renewable 100, and the CAC's reasoning for that is that residents can choose to opt down if they do not want to stay on Renewable 100, put commercial and industrial accounts on Bright Choice, put municipal accounts on Renewable 100, and CARE FIRA medical baseline customers on Bright Choice. Next slide, please. So tonight, our staff recommendation for the council is to, similar to what the CAC did, discuss prioritization of potential default products for Albany accounts. And the account categories are residential, commercial industrial, municipal, and CARE FIRA medical baseline. And on the right, you'll see just a quick breakdown of what products are offered, what their carbon-free content is, and their potential price range. But the details of this will really be covered in Alex DeGiorgio's presentation. So with that, I will pass the mic to Alex DeGiorgio of EBCE.
Thanks so much, Lizzie. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Pilch, members of the council, city staff, members of the public. It's an honor to be with you. But before I get into more detail, I just want to say what an honor it is to be here. I remember very well that Albany was one of the leaders in the entire county when it came to creating East Bay Community Energy. And so it feels right to be having this conversation because Albany is at the cutting edge when it comes to sustainability. And on that note, I also want to say how grateful I am to your staff, particularly Claire and Lizzie, for having so much patience as we sift through this technically complex, perhaps at times politically volatile topic. So with that, I'll get right into it. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just in case this does become technically complex, or I become less than coherent, or the internet doesn't work so well, the two main things we're discussing tonight are: one, changes to EBCE's Brilliant 100 service option, which is the primary and default option for the city of Albany and all of its electric accounts, or those that haven't opted out, the vast majority of them. And then we're going to discuss what are Albany's potential alternatives to Brilliant 100 should it change. Next slide, please. EBCE currently has 3 service options. In most of the county, in most jurisdictions, the default option is our Bright Choice option, and this option is more renewable than PG&E, guaranteed to be so, and rate. So it's a 1% discount and a minimum of 5% more renewable energy than what PG&E provides through its standard service. Brilliant 100 is actually a step up. Brilliant 100 is carbon free at price parity with PG&E. And then there's one level higher than that, which is 100% renewable, and it costs a penny per kilowatt hour more. And just for those at home that don't know the difference between carbon free and renewable energy is actually a legal definition which includes things like solar, wind, some biopower, geothermal energy, things like that. What it does not include are large hydroelectric resources and nuclear energy. Those two resources are considered carbon-free since they don't have direct emissions associated with them, but they're not considered qualify as renewable under the renewable portfolio standards of California. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, most jurisdictions are on the Bright Choice rate for most of their customers, most of their electricity customers, but Albany, Hayward, and Piedmont all select for different customers. And so I just wanted to give, again, a quick refresher for those who weren't familiar yet. But in Albany, currently all customer categories are on the Brilliant 100 service option unless they choose a different option. So unless they opt up or opt down or opt out. Next slide, please. So Brilliant 100, what's going on here? So Brilliant 100 has been 100% carbon-free at price parity with PG&E standard options. But what our team has discovered is that the rate at which we charge Brilliant 100 doesn't recoup the cost of providing it to customers. So it's not priced appropriately. It's not priced accurately anymore. So what our board decided to do in June was close Brilliant 100 to new accounts. And that actually is starting in July 2020, not January 2020. So starting in July 2020, no new accounts could enroll in Brilliant 100 as our board has grappled with how. And so really, as you'll see in the last set of bullets, there are a couple of options here that our board may choose to go, and they could increase the rate to be 2 to 5% above PG&E standard rates. So it would still be carbon free, but no longer at price parity with PG&E. Or they could discontinue the Brilliant 100 service option accounts currently on it, i.e. most of us in the city of Albany, would have to transition. And so the question there would be, do they transition down to Bright Choice and get a 1% discount, but not as much renewable energy and no longer carbon free, although it is 86% carbon free last year. Or they could decide also to continue going on, probably temporarily, with the status quo, but that would mean that Brilliant 100 customers would have to be subsidized by other customers. So that's probably not a solution that would last very long. Next slide, please. So again, just to try to clarify what our options are here. So in the green, you'll see there that it could raise the PG&E. It could close the service option, so that's no longer offered, in which case customers have to transition. And there's also now a third potential option, which is a little bit more complex. It would involve accepting a nuclear allocation from PG&E, which could then be used to create a new carbon-free service option at price parity with PG&E. But the difference is that it would rely in large part probably on nuclear power, which Brilliant 100 currently does not have nuclear power within its supply portfolio. So right now, all of the non-renewable power that's in Brilliant 100 is large hydroelectricity. So there's no nuclear in there currently. So that's what the change would be here with that third option. And also with that third option, it would only be available to cities that specifically decide have to take action so that they want that option available, because our board already visited this issue once and voted to decline a nuclear allocation that would have been integrated with our other service options. And I'm sure there might be questions on that, which I'd be happy to get to, but for the sake of time, I think I'll proceed right now. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our team did a quick analysis on the municipal accounts for the city, just as an example to kind of help illustrate what the price differences would be in the various alternatives. So if just the municipal accounts were to opt down, if they were to transition to the Bright Choice service option, they'd have a 1% discount, which would amount to a little between $500 and $600 a year. And so it's not a huge savings, but it is some savings. Larger accounts have larger savings, but it would be a savings probably in the hundreds, not the thousands of dollars. Conversely, if the city were to opt up its municipal accounts, you can see $7,000 a year to have fully renewable, 100% renewable energy, and all California-based renewable energy to supply the city's municipal accounts. And then that final column on the right, that difference is just these other two numbers put together. It's the difference that the city would be paying, both including the additional penny per kilowatt hour and also turning that 1% discount, foregoing that 1% discount. So a little more than $7,000 a year for the city's municipal accounts to be fully 100% renewable. And next, thank you very much. So this carbon-free allocation, and this is when we say carbon-free, again, we're talking about large hydroelectricity and nuclear power. For the purposes of our conversation right now, we're primarily talking about nuclear power because our board did decide to accept a allocation from PG&E of large hydroelectricity, but in its previous opportunity to do so, but not the nuclear part, which is larger, a more substantial volume of energy. So there's kind of a long backstory to question about it, but for now, I think what's most important to know is that after our board took up this issue in April and accepted the large hydroelectricity, but declined the nuclear power, we had some jurisdictions that followed up by sending letters to our agency asking if EBCE and its board would reconsider this to allow cities that specifically request an option that could include nuclear power to have that option. So cities that didn't want it in their mix wouldn't have to have it in their mix, but cities that don't have any issues with nuclear power per se or with this decision and still want to have a carbon-free option at price parity with PG&E could do so. So we will find out hopefully by the end of this month whether or not that allocation will be blessed by the Public Utilities Commission, I should say approved by the Public Utilities Commission. PG&E offered an advice letter requesting to make an allocation to CCAs like EBCE. Over years 2021 through 2020. That's because the last Canyon is scheduled for closure beginning in 2024 and completing in 2025. And that's where this allocation would be coming from. And the reason for that is, the reason for the allocation, the backstory there is that EBCE and all our customers really are paying for the energy that comes from Diablo Canyon already, not in their EBCE rates, but on a separate line item on your PG&E bill. There's an acronym PCIA. It stands for Power Charge. And one of the things that line item does is recoup costs for PG&E's stranded assets from customers that have withdrawn from PG&E to form or join community choice aggregation agencies like EBCE. I know that's a mouthful, but the point is this energy is being allocated not really for free, but it's at no cost to our agency because our customers are already paying for that energy. Next slide, please. So this is a tentative timeline because our board is still considering these items, but right now what we're looking at is we've asked your council to make a decision in November based on what the potential options could be. And then number two, whether the city it would be interested in having a new carbon-free price parity option that would be supplied by a nuclear allocation for anyone in the city. So the first question is, what's the city's default option? What should that be given the changes that could occur? And one of those options could be to accept the council does not want to accept the new allocation default, it may still want to accept it to allow others in the city to opt into that. So those are the decisions we're hoping the council can make by November. And then in November, our board will be considering changing the Brilliant 100 service option. So that means either increasing the rate by 2 to 5% or discontinuing it entirely, perhaps maintaining it for some limited period of time. And then our board will also likely be considering whether to accept a nuclear allocation, as I mentioned before, just to supply price parity option for those cities that request it, not to be integrated to our overall energy supply. Next slide, por favor. And then by December, our board would vote on the default service transition requests from Albany and Hayward and Piedmont, and as well as approving the default enrollment options for our new cities. We have 3 new cities that are joining, and so they're having very similar conversations to Albany and Hayward, since Albany and Hayward find themselves in the situation with Brilliant 100 changing. And then in January would be the time when we would really focus on outreach to make sure that folks know which changes are going to be occurring to their service option. Is it going to be a little bit more expensive? Is it going to have a different type of energy supply than it used to? That's something that we will want to make sure customers are aware of to the best of our ability. And the current, assuming the board approves this, the current Brilliant 100 rates would be extended until the end of January. So there'd be no changes until February would come into play. Next slide, please. Unless we're, yes. I hope that was, I know that was a lot there, so I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
I'm going to jump in first. Thank you for that presentation and ask you to repeat the acronym. It's Power Charge Indifference Adjustment. That's what PCIA is? Is that correct?
Some people think it stands for Protecting Corporate Interests and Assets, but that's not what it stands for. Power Charge Indifference Adjustment.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then just a note, for whatever reason, and I don't think it's just me, but every once in a while your audio stops for several seconds. So if we go like this, or if we ask you to repeat, that might be why. So just don't be offended by
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. Who knows where the issue might lie? It is the internet. So I will start with to see if my council members have any questions. Vice Mayor, go ahead, please.
Okay, I have a lot of questions, and if you don't mind, Alex, I'll just read them off, and then as you can answer them as you wish.
Okay.
some of them I already had, some I thought of as you spoke. Is part of the problem as to why this isn't working because not enough cities went to Brilliant 100 and too many cities went lower than that? Is that part of the problem? One question. How does the bottom plan, the bottom plan, I never can remember the names, I'm sorry, compare with the PG&E green? They do have a green energy plan, right? How do they compare? And does PG&E anticipate raising their rates in the near future, which would sort of change everything once again? Is the board's decision dependent upon what cities do? Was this set up so the cities would sort of give the board direction as to what we were interested in, and then they're going to respond? Because it seems backwards to me. It seems as though EBCE should tell us what the options are and we choose one rather than we're suggesting what we might like and then you figure out if that's going to work. That, to me, that feels backwards. I think you said somewhere in there that PG&E requested to allocate large hydro. Did I mishear that? Okay. Has there been any discussion across the state of combining the CCAs to get more purchasing power instead of having different ones in different counties, sort of starting our own kind of bigger municipal power, similar to PG&E, kind of a conglomerate sort of thing. And I guess my last thing is, to me, this does feel a bit like a bait and switch. You know, we got one thing and now we're not able to have what we really wanted. And I'm just wondering if the city has the option to leave East Bay Community Energy, can we opt out? I think those are my questions for now.
Would you like to go ahead, Mr. DiGiorgio?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I think I'll start in reverse order since that's what's freshest in my mind. And actually, your last question about it feeling like a bait and switch seems to kind of correspond to your first question about whether this is because too few cities chose Brilliant 100. It's actually the opposite problem. It's that become far more demand. Sorry,
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? Your screen froze.
Carbon-free resources have become in far greater demand than what was ever anticipated, in part because so many CCAs launched in California at the same time as East Bay Community Energy in 2018, launched service, that is. And the other thing with large hydroelectric resources is they aren't what they used to be. Like everything else, they're affected by climate change, and the rates of precipitation have been affected. So, with historic droughts, there's less hydroelectricity, and also when the Sierra snowpack melts earlier, rather than having a slow, gradual melt like it would under normal circumstances, there just isn't as much hydroelectricity as there used to be. So those kind of that intersection of much more demand with less supply is really what's driving the issue here. PG&E has a large that they have not been willing to make available until our legal team, along with those of others, our sister agencies, our sister CCAs.
Mr. Giorgio,
we lost the. You were saying PG&E has a large
hydroelectric fleet, and that all of our customers have been paying for, including those in Albany, and PG&E was unwilling to sell it. And so that's the backstory of why there's now been this allocation. So I'm hoping I'm addressing those questions there. As far as the decision being kind of backwards by our board, our board looks at Brilliant 100 as not the primary service option for the vast majority of our jurisdictions. So it's Albany and Hayward, and to a much less extent Piedmont, that are in this unique situation of where brilliant option. Let me repeat that Albany and Hayward and the incoming new communities are in the unique situation where Brilliant 100 means something different. So for most of our customers, this issue doesn't really affect them in the same way it affects your city. So I can understand. Just it's a minority of our accounts. I'm hoping I was able to address those questions. I realize I can.
What was that?
It's my fault.
I think there was the leaving EBCE question as well.
Leaving EBCE.
Yeah.
So the city can certainly opt out all of its municipal accounts and return to PG&E's energy supply, which would cost 1% more and would be almost half nuclear power at this point. But as far as withdrawing from the Joint Powers Authority, legally that's conceivable. It'd be unprecedented. No city has ever left a community choice aggregation agency that I'm aware of, and it would be quite costly. It would require the city to purchase the power that EBCE has procured on its behalf, which is millions of dollars a year, and the contracts can be as long as 25 years. So it would be quite costly and protracted, I would imagine. And but if you get enough lawyers in a room, anything can happen.
Did you get all your questions answered, Vice Mayor?
I think so.
Okay. And the next hand I saw was Councilmember Moss.
Thank you. Well, you answered one of my questions about hydropower, large hydropower. Because of the drought, I can see how that's all getting messed up and is probably in process of changing. But the other question is about nuclear. I believe Diablo Canyon is supposed to be decommissioned by 2025.
That's correct.
And so any use of nuclear is only temporary, as I understand it. So whatever you're trying to resolve right now is going to be up in the air again in a fairly short period of time. So I guess one of my questions is, I understand there's a big demand for the Renewable 100 product ultimately. Is there any indication that we're building enough wind farms or solar farms or anything else that would qualify to start meeting that demand? And what is East Bay Community Energy doing to kind of further that along, so this is only a kind of temporary blip on the path to getting to where we need to be getting in terms of renewables?
Yeah, great question. And yes, the nuclear allocation would just EBCE has already, through its procurement power, signed contracts for over 550 megawatts of new renewable energy in California. So we're well on our way to developing more robust renewable energy supplies. But I wouldn't expect that we'd be able to supply 100% of all of our service territory within the next couple of years. I think it's going to take longer than that. And to be perfectly candid with you, the real marginal reduction of emissions doesn't come with just putting more solar panels on the grid. It comes with shifting the load. And EBC is a leader already in procuring renewable energy that's stored and energy storage, period. So it's going to be really critical, and in order to meet our emissions targets, to not just develop more renewable power, but to be able to store it for when it's needed, particularly in the evenings. So that's really where what we're working on. But you're correct that if the nuclear allocation would be the choice of the city of Albany or other cities, it'll buy us some time where rates wouldn't have to increase, nor emissions wouldn't have to. But we'd have to find another option long term for how we're really going to supply our cities with more renewable energy. I mean, we can supply them with more renewable energy than PG&E, but that's the minimum standard. You know, we obviously want to be doing a whole lot more than that. And again, that's why we're focused so much on electric vehicle and energy storage.
Okay, thank you.
There are a few gaps in there. Did you catch that all, Councilmember Moss?
Mostly. I must say
Okay.
that this is technical enough. It's a bit challenging to follow, and then if there's a freeze on your screen, it doesn't make it any easier. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully by going over it a few times, we'll get all the words will come through in some combination or another.
It's probably because there's not enough renewable energy on the grid. That's my guess.
There you go.
No
Nice
doubt.
one. Yeah, so Councilmember Barnes had his hand up next.
Yeah. Me. First of all, I want to say, Alex, sometimes if you shut down your video when you're going to talk for a long time, that lowers the bandwidth requirements, and that means your audio comes through more consistently.
Okay.
Just a thought. Well, here's my question. If there's a supply and demand situation that's increasing the cost of renewables, wouldn't that also be reflected in your Renewable 100 plan? Wouldn't you have to raise the cost of that as well?
Potentially, but is generally coming down. It's the cost of the carbon-free resources, and particularly large hydroelectricity, that have been going up so quickly because there's been such a demand for them suddenly, and they're diminishing. Because no one's building any more large hydroelectric dams in California. Certainly no one's building any more nuclear power in California these days. So you have a finite supply, whereas the supply of renewables is increasing, both wind and solar, and to a much lesser extent, some of the other renewables like geothermal and biopower and stuff like that. So I think long-term, we expect renewable energy, so utility scale renewable energy, to continue to decline and become more cost competitive. You know, it's really right now, it's competition with natural gas above all things. And there's a glut of gas on the market. So that's really where the economic and financial battle is occurring between those two resources. But we all know natural gas is a fossil fuel, and we're not going to be saving this planet with natural gas.
Beats coal. You're saying that you don't buy large hydro from Bonneville Power?
No, I'm not. I don't recall saying that.
But BPA is in Washington State. So do you buy BPA power? You had mentioned, you talked about large hydro in California.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we do buy, we have contracts with large hydroelectricity in the Pacific Northwest as well. I don't know that area as well, but I don't think there's a whole lot of additional large hydroelectric dams being built there either.
No, there's not. I mean, the Columbia River is sort of dammed up already.
Right, all the best spots to put a dam have already been dammed.
Right, all right, just a quick question. So just to follow up on Peggy's question about opting out, it sounds like if Albany were to opt out of East Bay Clean Energy, in effect, we would have your PCIA to pay over the coming years, even though we opted out. Just as, because we opted into East Bay Clean Energy, we have to pay PG&E's PCIA now. Is that a fair understanding of the issue?
Yeah, that's an interesting way of putting it. Yeah, I guess it would. I mean, gosh, the idea of having two PCIAs does not sound very appealing, does it? But yeah, I mean, I would say that there are certainly big differences between what's gone into the PCIA that you're currently paying and what some potential future withdrawal payment would be to EBCE. But I got to be honest with you, council member, I really haven't done too much analysis on that because it's never come up before. But yeah, I mean, essentially the city would have to purchase the power that the agency has procured on its behalf. And yeah, in a nutshell, that is what the PCIA is. But again, I think there are other issues with the PCIA that I'd be happy to talk with you more about, but I'm not sure that it would really be.
Yeah, it's not a big point. So
happy to talk.
Is there going to be my last question, when Diablo Canyon shuts down, is there going to be sort of a slow unwinding, a ramping down process, or is it going to be like throwing the light switch off on? Let's see, they're producing about 2 gigawatts. But, it used to be about 10% of the power of California. Is probably lower than that. But that's a really big chunk of the power that's going to disappear fairly rapidly. So what's that adjustment process going to be like?
That's a great question. And what it's going to be like is potentially base load power. Sorry, it looked like my screen froze, so I'll just repeat that. It's going to be a large loss of base load power. So what that will mean is that unless we're able to develop more storage capacity, that gap will be filled largely with dispatchable power, which is natural gas. So we have several years or less than that to really focus on not just building out more solar panels when the sun is shining, but storing that energy, shifting our load, getting really innovative and creative the way all of these public agencies are trying to do to prepare for that day so that we're not relying on natural gas. I think there are those who would love to see more natural gas get used and purchased. But that's not EBCE, and I don't think that that's our sister CCAs either.
All right, fine. I'm sorry. One last question. Pumped hydro. We have the Helms facility. Castiactors has some pumped hydro. Is there any plans to do any more pumped hydro in California?
I didn't quite catch the last part of your question, but as far as plans for more pumped large hydro, I don't know of any specifically, but pumped large hydro is a great way of storing energy. You've got to have the space to do it, and it can be expensive initially. But right now, most of our storage has been lithium-ion battery storage, and we're also working with how to store the energy in vehicles as well, which is also ultimately lithium-ion.
Okay, that's fine. I'm done. Thank you.
More pumped hydro. Okay.
Okay. So I'm just going to pause the proceedings for one moment because I see our previous guest, Mr. Weiss, has his hand up. Perhaps he's been able to resolve his audio problem. Would you mind just letting him in real quick, City Clerk, just to see if that is indeed the case?
Go ahead, Mr. Weiss.
No, still not hearing any audio. Sorry about that. Well, thank you for trying. Welcome again. We'll go back to our EBCE proceedings then. So I think that the Councilmember Moss had his hand up again, or looks like he put it down. Did you want to speak? Oh, you put it down. Okay. Did Councilmember Nason? Did you have any questions?
No.
Okay. So I have a couple at this point, and so the nuclear allocation. I'm never sure I got a great, or maybe I didn't listen very well to the answer about whether or not the nuclear allocation comes to us entirely free or not.
It's free to the have to purchase that volume of energy. It's a
Sorry,
substantial volume.
can you start one more time? You said
Sure.
it's free. Go ahead.
It would be free to the agency. EBCE would not have to purchase anything to receive a substantial volume of energy. But it's not free in the larger sense that our customers, our communities, we're all already paying for it through our PCIA charges. So if we don't accept the allocation, or I should say because we haven't accepted the allocation, we essentially are asking our customers and communities to pay for the same volume of energy twice. Once through the PCIA, and then a second time when they pay the rates to EBCE, if we have to go out and purchase the same volume of energy through other resources.
Got it. Okay, yeah, that's why we fought to get that nuclear allocation. Okay, and is it not true that on our power for the Bright Choice customers, and this will be important in discussion later, is it not true that for the Bright Choice customers, we do see nuclear power on there, not necessarily because we want to see it, but somehow we get power from unspecified sources, which comes with a nuclear component. And so even so we do see nuclear appear on the Bright Choice product, the lowest price product. Is that the case, Mr. DiGiorgio?
Yeah, for the first time in 2019, 1% was, to what the point Councilmember Barnes was making. It's because of the resources that we purchase in the Pacific Northwest. There's also nuclear power in that area. And so they had to include, again, a very small percentage. We're talking 1% from those hydroelectric resources. 1% was nuclear power.
Okay. And thank you. So I have some comments, but I'll save them till after public comment. If there's no other questions, then let's go to public comment, if any. Are there any, is there anyone who wants to, oh, Vice Mayor, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. DiGiorgio, could you repeat again about the nuclear is free to EBCE. The customers are already paying it through the PCIA.
Yeah.
And then they'd be charged again? Is that what you're saying?
No. What I'm saying is because it's paid for through the PCIA, PG&E will allocate it to our agency. I'll try that again. Because it's paid through by the PCIA, that's why PG&E was willing to allocate it to us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, let's go to public comment. Although I don't see any hands raised, are we sure no one wants, members of the public, no one wants to speak on this? Okay. In case you have made an error or have stepped away for a moment, we'll catch you on when you're back at your device. But there's no public comment at this time. So let's bring it back to the council for discussion. I wanted to mention a couple of things that have come to mind as I listened to the discussion. One about the bait and switch. I think from what I understand, what EBCE is dealing with and what all the CCAs are dealing with is just a tremendously volatile time in the energy procurement business, starting out with a lawsuit, PG&E, bankruptcy of PG&E for one thing, and the effects on that, wildfires and the bankruptcy, so the financial effect on PG&E, wildfires affecting PG&E as well with their transmission lines and other findings where they might have been liable. As Mr. Giorgio mentioned, PG&E actually owns a lot of renewable resources, and the ramp-up time for carbon-free and renewable resources is substantial, so we cannot even get the energy that we want, the type of energy that we want. Everyone's kind of fighting for all this clean energy, and there isn't enough to go around. Climate change, droughts, and climate change resulting in droughts and the wildfires. And so I think that all the CCAs have to respond to these extraordinary pressures in a fairly short period of time and trying to do their best. So I think the EBCE staff have actually been doing a great job to try to come up with innovative or creative plans to try to preserve the value that we wanted, the value, in like things like Brilliant 100 that we were promised in the beginning, in creative ways that will allow us to keep that, but have to make adjustments, like perhaps having that nuclear power allocation. And as I mentioned in a prior meeting, there was a discussion at the last board meeting, or one of the last board meetings, that the new jurisdictions and even the current jurisdictions were still very much interested in this Brilliant 100 product. So not just Albany and Hayward, but other jurisdictions might want to have this product as well, putting even more pressure on the carbon-free resources, come to think of it. So that's all going on. And finally, you should know that the nuclear thing is a bit of a political football. And maybe I'll stop there, because I do see that look like I did think that there was one member of the public who did want to comment. So why don't we let that member of the public in, and then I'll finish up. City Clerk, if you would, please.
Hi, this is Jessica Tovar of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I work with the local Clean Energy Alliance. I was not planning to speak. I was planning to listen. But what I feel like is not being discussed is the fact that in April, as a matter of fact, Earth Day of this year, 10 of 15 board members, including yourself, Nick, who voted against taking nuclear energy. And there were 64 community members who waited during a 5-hour meeting to speak out against nuclear for various reasons, and only one person who spoke out in favor of nuclear energy. So this has been probably the biggest issue coming to the East Bay Community Energy Board. And just to add that adding nuclear energy to the clean energy program does not look good on East Bay Community Energy. So if a city decides to take nuclear energy, that will mar the entire program, okay? And I want folks to understand that PG&E has an excess of nuclear energy. They can't meet their renewable portfolio standard. So what a better way to get rid of their excess nuclear energy than to dump it on their competition, community choice programs in the state of California. What also has not been discussed today is that only 3 community choice programs out of many have chosen to take the nuclear under the assumption that they can actually sell that energy, okay? So majority of community choice programs have rejected the nuclear energy from PG&E. As a matter of fact, some community choice programs went as far as to create a policy to completely ban nuclear energy from their programs moving forward. On top of that, I want to remind folks what nobody is also talking about is that nuclear energy is not clean. The fact that where it's dumped is mostly in Native communities' lands, and it lasts practically forever. This is a decision moving forward about, are you going to honor future generations, or are you going to continue to dump on them? Because nuclear energy, you don't need to take it in your clean energy community choice program. The community doesn't want it, and it's also not clean. And community choice has made promises of being community centered and being clean. This absolutely makes no sense. That's all I want to say.
Thank you for your comments. And we have a couple more speakers, and this will be the final time I let in public speakers. So go ahead, please, City Clerk, and allow the members of the public in.
Hi, this is Dan Lieberman. I work at EBCE and I live in Albany, and just wanted to make a couple of points of clarification given the most recent speaker's comments, Jessica Tovar, who's been a great advocate for EBCE. But I think there were a couple of points in there that were just factually incorrect that I will take the opportunity to correct. One is, if I heard her clearly, I thought she said that PG&E wouldn't meet their RPS obligation, their renewable portfolio obligation. I believe that is incorrect. I haven't seen anything that said that PG&E would not meet their renewable portfolio obligation. Another was her comments about that I thought implied that this decision would impact the outcome of Diablo Canyon in terms of nuclear waste management. There's nothing in this decision that Albany or EBCE is making that will impact the outcome of Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant in any way. The nuclear waste will be managed the same way regardless of what the city of Albany decides or how EBCE's board decides. That the policy decision on the retirement of that facility has been made. It's on a timeline, and the one reactor will be retired in 2024. The other will be retired in 2025. So it's just, I think we should try and take that part of the argument out of the decision-making process, because our decision makes no impact on that. And I feel like it clouds the waters. And then finally, I would just say, Jessica said that the community doesn't want it. And I would agree there was a great showing of concern from stakeholders at our board meeting, at the EBCE board meeting. But this conversation tonight is about Albany and gathering input in this public comment period about what people in Albany think, and then allowing Nick Pilch as a board member to bring that information, to mind and for you all to discuss. And Jessica does not live in Albany, and so I hope there are other speakers who will share their opinions, whether they agree with Jessica or not. I won't express whether my opinion. I don't feel like it's appropriate, but I just wanted to make sure that when she says the community doesn't want it, that she is not representing Albany. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. This is Jeremiah. I just have one comment and a question. My comment is long-term, obviously in going solar, because every home, if they get solar panels, they're self-sufficient. Now, do we all recall what happened in Japan with the nuclear disaster, right? Radioactive in Japan, that big disaster. So if there's a disaster in California, there goes the entire state of California. And exactly, where does all this nuclear waste go? To Native American land. So they say it's clean energy, but there is still nuclear waste. It's radioactive uranium, plutonium. So my question is that maybe you can answer is, truthfully, how will the Albany residents benefit? Thank you.
Thank you. And I think we can consider that question in our deliberation. So thank you to the speakers. As you can see, the nuclear option can be charged. And there's a great deal of discussion at the board meeting. So just a couple of things before I, just to let the other council members know what the board meetings look like a little bit. First of all, I agree with Dan that the decision to accept nuclear or not is largely symbolic. It's not going to change whether Diablo Canyon gets shut down sooner or not. The power is there. It will go away in 2025, and that's the end of it as far as I can tell. I have not seen anything to the contrary. But there is a great public outcry about this. Our neighbor next door, the mayor of Berkeley, who's a member of EBCE, is a very big opponent of nuclear power, having nuclear power at all. He is joined by other voices on the board, but I did hear, as I mentioned before, other voices being much more receptive to that, knowing that they wanted the Brilliant 100, other voices on the board being much more receptive to that. And there was one more point I wanted to make. Oh, yes, which is that going back to the creativity of the staff, they've, in order, I think, to try to mitigate the nuclear political issues somewhat, they are asking that they're saying that, well, we could do this such that the cities that decide to take the nuclear in order to have Brilliant 100, it's those cities deciding, and the other cities aren't tainted, if you will, with nuclear. And the cities that take it are, do accept that responsibility. So I think it's kind of creative that the staff has come up with that as a way to maybe punt the political football. So I'll stop there and see what discussion we have among the council members, if any. And council member, who's first, Moss or McQuaid? Let's go with McQuaid.
I was just going to ask if we could see the CAAP recommendation again. And while you're bringing that up, I just want to mention that I watched their meeting last week, their special meeting, and I thought they did a really nice job of asking really thoughtful questions, coming together, coming up with this recommendations. I thought it was a really good, well-run meeting, and I really appreciated watching it.
Staff, are you able to go? I think it was Mr. DeGiorgio who was, it was Ms. Carrad who was had that file, and looks like there she goes. Oh, Claire is sharing it. Perfect. Thank you. And did you have a comment on that, Vice Mayor, or you just wanted to have that in front of us?
I just wanted it in front of us.
Okay, very good. Yeah. And Councilmember Moss, go ahead.
Okay, I mean, we're not making a decision tonight. We're getting a review of what the issues are, and it sounds as if the decision will be asked for sometime in November, which is fine because this is pretty dense stuff and weighing one thing versus another. What I'm seeing on the screen right now, the Climate Action Committee's recommendations make a lot of sense to me. On the question of nuclear, I've marched in marches, I guess it was decades ago now, but to end Diablo Canyon, to get rid of nuclear. I'm glad it is finally getting phased out, but I'm also of the school of not wanting to look, it's hard to think of this as a gift horse, but if we're already paying for this and this is going to keep our Brilliant 100 somewhat together, for the next couple of years, I don't have such a big issue with nuclear because it's going to be out there anyway, and all the issues around nuclear are going to be the issues whether we're taking some or not taking some. As I've said before, when this has come up for discussion, it seems to me if this buys us some time, particularly buys us some time to figure out our storage issues, whether they be battery or pumped hydro or, something, compressed gas, what all the different options are for storage. Then we should do it, and we should get busy on that storage issue so we can have the lights on at night and not worry about whether the sun's out. So that's kind of my general, take on this right now. But we're gonna be coming back to this in November. So, it's just general thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I'll note that the second recommendation is to keep from CAC is to keep Brilliant 100, even if it has the nuclear option. And was there another comment by council member? I'll go ahead and weigh in. I mean, I agree with Councilmember Moss that it's largely symbolic, and this is money we get for free to address Ms. Tovar's assertion. Yes, I did vote against the nuclear back in April. And at that time, we were given a presentation by EBCE staff that showed that accepting the nuclear would not make a big difference in our financial bottom line at that time. At that time, as I said, it's been a very volatile time for the energy market. It was clear that there were board members who were very adamant against the nuclear, and a lot of members of the community who were adamant against the nuclear, and that persuaded me to vote against the nuclear. Then when Brilliant 100 was threatened, I felt like, well, I've always had a very pragmatic feeling about this, that it's really a symbolic thing. It's not going to, we're not causing the nuclear market. We're not supporting the nuclear market by doing this. It's gonna, that plant's gonna function until 2025, no matter what. So might as well make the pragmatic vote to accept it in this way, that perhaps only where we say we take the responsibility, us cities who are taking it, we take the responsibility of taking it, only us cities and the other cities not. So that's my 2 cents. And so happy to hear any other thoughts of council members. As you know, I might be, or actually another council member come the new year might be making that decision. So.
Well,
Councilmember Mason.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I second Councilmember Moss's comments. I think the CAC recommendations sound well considered. Personally, I worry more about large hydro than nuclear, because I see nuclear being phased out, whereas large hydro has ongoing damage pretty much forever. So I'm very comfortable with these recommendations.
And then Councilmember Barnes had a comment.
Yeah, I'm concurring as well. It seems to me to be sort of a Pyrrhic victory to spend extra resources just to have to not accept nuclear power for 2 or 3 years when it's going to go away anyway. I'm just not bothered by this. If we want to go with, the nuclear option to maintain the cost of Brilliant 100, I'm fine with it.
Okay, thank you. Do I see any last council member comments? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. But I do have a question though. It is possible that the board won't allow the cities to have nuclear. Is that am I correct in that? That we want to be able to make that choice, but we may not actually have that choice?
Are you, well, the full board will be making will be voting on things. So it's, if I understand your question correctly, the board could vote that no city is allowed to take the nuclear. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's hope they don't do that. But yeah, I think this is a fine recommendation, at least for tonight.
Okay. So hopefully that helps EBCE staff with the thinking in Albany. Seems to be some consensus there. So if there's nothing else, thank you very much, Ms. Griffin, Ms. Cruddy, and Mr. Giorgio. And I don't think we have any action on this item. It was just a discussion. So pulling up my notes. Okay, receiver presentation. All right, very good. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next item, which number 10 is a public hearing, of which there are none, and number 11 is unfinished business. And this is the urgency ordinance amending our previously urgency ordinances. And tonight we're talking about moratorium on eviction for certain commercial tenants. So staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Pilch. At your last meeting, you directed our office to prepare an urgency ordinance to extend the prohibition on evictions for commercial tenants. We have prepared that ordinance. Also, since your last meeting, the governor has extended his executive order, which does allow us to adopt this type of ordinance as it relates to protections for commercial tenants. His executive order has now been extended until March 31st of 2021. Therefore, we've prepared the urgency ordinance to match the timeframe of his executive order, which is what we have previously done. So what is before you is the extension as it relates to the commercial tenancy protections until March 31st, 2021. As we previously discussed, the governor signed into law on August 31, 2020, AB 3088, which has some statewide protections for residential tenants and does not allow the city to amend or extend its urgency ordinance as it relates to the residential tenant protections. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there was a question about the effect on mortgages. Our ordinance, as well as the governor's executive order, encouraged lenders to not evict or not, excuse me, foreclose on homeowners or commercial owners of property for their failure to pay their mortgage because of COVID issues. We aren't able to actually do anything more than encourage the lenders to not take those steps. AB 3088 provides an extra noticing requirement before lenders foreclose on residential homeowners, but it doesn't go further than really just requiring that extra notice requirement and opportunity to cure for residential tenants. I'm happy again to answer any other questions, but before you is an extension as it relates to the commercial provisions.
Yeah, thank you. And the Vice Mayor has her hand up for a question.
Thank you. Mala, we did receive an email and I've had a conversation with a landowner regarding their tenant refusing to pay any rent, even though they are open part-time. And they have many stores, and the concern was what exactly is income and how do you determine that? Is there any way we could clarify this, or is there any relief we can give to the property owner?
I did see that email. I think you're referring to an email from Mr. Chen, and it did seem like his tenant was not on a couple of different fronts, not complying with what our ordinance provided for. One point I wanted to make is that it looked like the tenant was factoring in maybe business issues that occurred in January and February of 2020 before our local emergency was adopted, and that isn't allowed for in our ordinance. Separately, our ordinance doesn't provide for what I'll call a carry forward provision. Each month, the tenant is supposed to show what they were, what their business provided for. And so if in, let's say, July, you had a good month, but in all the previous months, starting from March, you had challenging months, you don't get to add up the losses and keep carrying those over. And it looked like Mr. Chen's tenant was doing that. So I do think their tenant isn't matching our ordinance. And I think Mr. Chen may want to look into that and see about receiving proper payment. We didn't have a definition, Vice Mayor McQuaid, on maybe some of the issues that Mr. Chen raised about net and gross income, but I think our intent was to provide relief for tenants who had real COVID-related expenses that couldn't pay, as opposed to if you had income generated from other avenues such as the internet or other, if you had chain businesses in other cities that were doing very well, so that I don't think it was our intent to create a scenario where you were using this as maybe an avenue not to pay rent when you really could afford to pay it.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And so to follow up with that, then if Mr. Chen wanted relief, it would be to go to the courts to secure that relief. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll also note that I received a phone call or a voice message from the sister of Mr. Chen, I believe, who's a business partner in that same endeavor. Other questions from the council members? I'm seeing no other questions from council members. Do we have any public comment on this item? I'm not seeing any hands yet. Does any member of the public want to comment on this item? Going once, going twice. I'll bring it back to the council, who now has a hand raised, and that is Councilmember Barnes. Please go ahead.
Well, just a general question on the taking issue. Do you have any concerns about going forward with this ordinance 2020-13 vis-a-vis taking issues or legal repercussions?
Well, as we've talked about before, the payment for commercial tenants on two folds. One is now it allows for a longer payment period than the residential tenants are provided for under state law. And then two, it doesn't trigger, presuming the tenant can make the appropriate showing of hardship. The payments don't trigger until 12 months after we end the local emergency. And we haven't ended the local emergency. And given the nature of the pandemic, I'm not sure when we are going to end the local emergency. So it does create for a very long payment period. And yes, there is a potential for someone to argue a takings. That was always there when we had a shorter provision, but we do have one of the longer provisions now with the 12 months without a finite date, because it's 12 months when we end the local emergency, which, as I mentioned, we don't know when that's going to occur.
Right. So the takings issue really comes when we sort of get out ahead of the state and do something that's stronger than the state is going to do. Then the state will no longer provide us with any cover. Is that a fair?
I mean, I think arguably, it helps to have to be more in line with the state. But, even if the state was doing something a bit longer, it wouldn't necessarily save us from a takings challenge. What the executive order really does to help us is that there were other state provisions that we would have conflicted with in adopting this type of ordinance. And because the governor has kind of halted those and allowed us to adopt this type of ordinance, we don't have to worry about someone arguing it conflicts with other state laws. But it doesn't take away any potential takings challenge.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item among the council members? Seeing none, does anyone have, would anyone like to move the item?
I will. I'll move, let me get this right. I'll move we adopt the urgency ordinance 2020-03.
13.
There's 3, right?
1-3.
I'm sorry?
It's 1-3. If you look at the
1-3.
second line of the staff recommendation that the council adopt.
Isn't it 2020-03?
No, it's 2021-3. 03 was the original ordinance.
Oh, okay,
adopted.
2021-3. Is that sufficient, since I've already bungled it?
I think so. I saw a nod from the city attorney. And do we have a second?
I second.
All right, we both second.
Okay. And we'll do a coin toss for the second. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion by the council? Seeing none, could you do the roll call vote, please, City Clerk?
Could I verify who I should note down as the second? Councilmember Nason or Councilmember Barnes?
Nason.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Nason?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuay?
Yes.
Mayor Pilch?
Yes.
And the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on to new business. The last item, the last substantive item, the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District appointment. We've now been I can't remember what the formal definition is. We've been annexed. Albany has been annexed into the district. That's it. And now we get to appoint someone to represent us. Is there a staff report?
And you're muted.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to unmute. So like Mayor Pilch said, Albany was recently annexed to the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District. Staff was informed of the vacant Albany trustee seat on the board. Typically, council makes appointments and identify alternates to county and regional bodies in December of each year. And this year it was scheduled to be on your December 21st, 2020 regular meeting. However, due to the long-term planning discussion that Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District will be having during their upcoming board meetings, staff is requesting that council make this appointment tonight to ensure Albany is included in the discussion. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from council members? Would any member of the public like to speak on this item? Not seeing any hands from the public. I will note that if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve to this appointment. I think you should probably pick maybe Peggy or Rochelle to serve. I see Rochelle has her hand up.
And I'd like to nominate Peggy.
You know, I'm fine to do it until December. And then I think when we reorganize the council, then it's time to find a more permanent representative for us.
Is everyone amenable? Everyone amenable?
If we don't send anyone, does that mean the mosquitoes go away? That would be good.
So I'd like to make a suggestion that, I think this is great that Peggy can take this on now, and perhaps we'll want to consider doing it, on to the next year when 3 of us are gone, or some other council member may want to do it, or whoever becomes mayor. But, this is a position that I don't think has to be done by an elected official.
Right.
And so there might want to be a bit of discussion about appointing some head of say, climate action, which, or perhaps another commission, but at least climate action, it does strike me as being somewhat related to mosquito issues that we're likely to have in the coming decades. So there may be a good connection there. And, just an idea.
I think that's a really good idea. And I think, as we talk about having more and more people involved in the city, this is an opportunity for somebody who's not even on a commission. I think it just seemed like right now we needed somebody quickly. And it's just kind of like get this done for a couple of months and then have a better plan. But I totally agree. It does not have to be a council member unless somebody really wants to do it.
I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the staff report. How do you guys know it doesn't have to be a council member? I missed that.
If you look at and it's not in the staff report, but if you look at their board, they're not all council members, I don't believe.
Yeah, my guess is, I couldn't quite figure it out, but my guess is that this is often something a staff person ends up doing.
Yeah.
And our staff is often kind of overwhelmed with all the stuff that we're asking them to do. So we might want to consider a commission member. And it would certainly be great training for some of our commission members who want to, get another taste of what the governing system is like. So.
And as part of the recruitment for the advisory body members, we can also put that as a recruitment.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we can declare that we are all united in the support of the vice mayor taking the position, and we don't have to take a formal vote on this unless the city attorney thinks so.
Could we get a formal vote anyways? Because I do need to send the minutes over to the board.
Okay. Could someone move this item then?
So move.
I'll second.
Second.
Okay, it's a motion and a second that Vice Mayor McQuaid be the appointee to the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement Board. And would you do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Barnes?
Yes.
Councilmember Moss?
Yes.
Councilmember Nason?
Yes.
Vice Mayor McQuaid?
Yes.
Mayor Pilch?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, next item on our agenda is 13, request for future agenda items. Are there any? If none, we will move on to item 14, which is the announcement of city meetings and events. I'll note that the next city council meeting is October 19th, on Monday. And if there's no other business, I had a request to close the meeting in memory of Elaine Abondo Vidia. And I have some words from Jeremiah Pinguello, her partner. And okay, and we have a photo. I received a different photo, but this is a very nice photo as well. And thank you for displaying that, City Clerk. And I received some words from Jeremiah, and I will read from them now. He titles this Dr. Elaine Irene Obando Videa, Esquire, Doctor of Jurisprudence, graduated from the University of California, Berkeley, May 22nd, 1993, graduated from Golden Gate University School of Law, May 19th, 2001, admitted as an attorney and counselor at law by the Supreme Court of California State Bar on December 2nd, 2001. The United States District Court duly admitted Elaine to the Northern District of California on May 10th, 2002. Elaine lived right in the heart of our community and loved helping people. Elaine successfully opened her own solo practice law office on Solano Avenue, providing easy access to anybody needing legal assistance, operating on a pay as what you can afford program to all clients. Also acting as a practicing attorney, Elaine was the top litigator and legal writer of both Bishop Berry LLC and Mound Cotton LLC during Elaine's 20-year law career. She'd won 100% of her cases in court. As an accomplished dancer, Elaine was Albany's first certified Zumba instructor, teaching free classes to the public at Albany's library in the Edith Stone Room every Saturday morning. Her loving, bright spirit and beautiful presence graced our communities, parades, and festivals. Elaine volunteered at the Albany Goat Track Farm for many years and frequently brought flowers to the volunteers of the Albany Community Shower Project. Elaine would give Albany council members, Albany council members, police and fire department personnel balloons and holiday cards and bouquet of mistletoe at Elaine's favorite holiday, Christmas. The unfortunate passing of Elaine has given the city of Albany a valuable learning opportunity to grow and listen to people in need of assistance, while also teaching others to take action in the moment, which will guide Albany to more fully recognize and support our community's needs. Thank you, Elaine, for loving Albany. And I'll take a moment of silence to remember Elaine. Thank you, and we are adjourned. Good night.
Good night.
Night.